Yes, and thanks everybody for joining this morning. The real goal of this discussion, and I really want it to be a discussion, not necessarily a presentation, is to share ideas, best practices, pain, issues specific to getting more business, right? My assumption is that the audience here are consultants, obviously oftentimes solopreneurs, smaller companies. For example, Taylor, help me out here, Taylor Fernley. What is your business, if I may? I don't think you and I have met before.
Oh, let me go. Okay, there we go. Yeah, first of all, great to be here, Mark. Yeah, we're in the association management world. So we work with leaders of nonprofit membership-based organizations to fulfill the mission. So we're kind of, well, I don't like the phrase, we're the back office. We put on the conventions, do all the trade shows, marketing, PR, and we do all that for them. And for those things that we don't do or don't do as well as we feel as if we should be doing, I talk to people like you and say, would you partner with us to, put together a proposal for XYZ? We've been doing it for 135 years. Founded the industry back in 1886 and always been in Philadelphia and been a member of Beacon for 15, 18 years.
Yeah. Okay, good. So your job, part of your responsibility is to not only keep existing customers happy, but also to increase revenue with those, or increase services in your case, with those existing customers. And I suppose in a perfect world to get more customers. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely, precisely here, Mark. That's the name of the game.
Yeah. That's the name of the game. And one thing I'll say as it relates specifically to sales, and like it or not, we're all in sales, right? We all are, particularly if your bread and butter is dependent on your clients paying you. You're in sales, and when it's all said and done, sales comes down to one thing as far as success goes, and that's purely and simply the number at bats. The more opportunities you have to speak with prospective customers, referral partners, existing customers about the value that you and your company provide and the problems that it solves for those clients and prospects, the more business you're going to get. It's about the number at bats. It's that simple. And ideally, in a perfect world, in what I do, and I'm not a sales coach per se. That's not really my job, but I just thought this would be helpful for the Beacon community to share some of these best practices that I've been sharing with clients. But the ideal is to have quality at bats, right? It's one thing to have lots of meetings with lots of people. When I say meetings nowadays, are Zoom calls, right? Predominantly. But you'd be better off talking to the right people, So your time is valuable, so is theirs. So it's about quality at bats in the end. So today, what we want to do is, one, take a hard and realistic look at what has happened in our worlds in this B2B space, because that's what we're typically all in. That's my focus. As a consultant, as a service company, if you will, that supports B2B companies, how have things changed and how do we need to change? And then to make some adjustments based on some of the things we talk about. And finally, we get it that there's an issue. We understand there's different ways to be more productive, but it doesn't mean anything. It means nothing if we don't take action, right? And that's the hardest part. So hopefully, if I've done anything today, I've inspired you, provided you with a few tools to try something a little different, add a little more activity into your day as far as generating interest and getting more business. All right. Okay, come on. There we go. So a little bit of humor on the right there. I'm gonna say I saw this somewhere a while back, but I just thought it resonated. You know, we do if we do nothing, that's the results we're going to get, right? And if you look at my client base, and they're B2B companies, small to mid-sized B2B companies. There was a company called Sales Acceleration. Actually, it's a firm that does something similar to what I do, and they did a study on their clients and found the top 5 things that they're not doing well that are impacting their ability to be successful. And I'm not going to read you all of these, but the bottom line is that if they do have sales folks, they're not adequately training them. What it really boils down to is, what is the plan of action? Who's responsible for it? And what are the results that we're trying to achieve? All right. The other reality, let's see. I'm going to pick on some folks. So Joe, if you may.
Sure.
If I may. Joe Hare, how are you? Thanks.
Doing great.
Your business. Tell us a little bit about your business.
So I provide information technology consulting, primarily project management, Salesforce and Salesforce administration, and primarily for businesses that have manufacturing ERP systems and do all, supply chain handling.
That's great. You and I need to get together, because that's the market that my clients are. Well, I have quite a few manufacturing type clients.
Excellent.
So yeah. And Joe, I'm going to put you on the spot, but that's okay. We're all here to learn and take a few chances.
Yes.
So how do you get new customers?
So it's all been through referrals with people that I know or have worked with in the past. So
Okay.
I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to keep my dance card full from those types of engagements.
Amen.
At some point, I figure that's not going to continue working. So
Yeah. Well, no. First and foremost, you're not different than, I suspect, everyone on this call, is that most, if not all, of our clients come from referrals, which is fantastic, right? That's the best kind. And in the professional services that I'm in, realistically, what am I going to do? Cold call CEOs of small to mid-sized businesses and say, "Hey, do you want your sales to grow?" I mean, it's not very effective, right? It's a very kind of trust-oriented, competency-oriented, thing that I do. It's very specialized, and the same thing holds true for what you do, Joe. And in the end, we're going to talk about 2 ways, and I think this will be hopefully very helpful for you and others here, about how to increase opportunities with your existing customers, right? Because they're the best resource for new business, no question. And other referral partners, like the folks that are on this call and the folks that are in Beacon. But, we still, if we were to look at proactively prospecting for new business, the cold calling type activities where we identify, an ideal target market. For example, you B2B, sounds like manufacturing companies who are ERP looking to implement or having struggles with certain ERPs, right? If we could, and we can, I mean, that's where my colleague on the sales and marketing group, that's what his specialty is, right? He can find the companies that, are having those issues, right? So if we could identify those, great. Now we can go and generate some interest and say, "Hey, or how you doing with that?" And we can help you do it better and faster, and save you time and money. Actually put that ERP into work instead of sweating bullets, right? Mm-hmm. By the way, I've been in the, I guess, traditional world of, small startups, but also large companies as vice president of sales for a small 17 billion division of GE, right? And if you want to see a CEO sweat, tell them they're going to get a new ERP system. But the reality is, in the slide kind of points it out, is that pure kind of prospecting approach, which is very effective, but that's not really what we are set up to do. That's not really our core competency. It could be, I mean, most of these things, my recommendation would be to outsource them. There's plenty of really good companies. There's plenty of folks within Beacon who specialize in setting some of these things up and actually doing some of these, outbound prospecting activities. And the goal of these outbound prospecting activities is one thing and one thing only. And this is also true, and I'll mention this in a minute, for the folks on this phone call, is that your goal, your only goal, when you're having a discussion with a potential customer, you don't fully understand yet what their issues are. You may have been even referred by another client. Your goal, your only goal, is to get a commitment to meet or have a discussion, not to sell, right? And that's one of the basic mistakes that I see, salespeople do all the time, is that they finally get somebody on the phone to talk about what they do, and they start selling, and it's not the right time. The only thing you're doing for that first meeting is just that, to secure a meeting to discuss, that client's issues and how your company might help them solve those issues. So, but you can see it here. You got, with emails, for example, you got 2.7 seconds to grab their attention. It's hard, right? And in order to actually get one initial discussion with a qualified prospect who you don't even know might be a good match for the value you offer, it takes 6 to 7 touches, emails, phone calls, social touches. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. All right, so let's talk about what we can do in the environment that we're currently in. And this is particularly germane, I believe, to the audience here, is that, okay, where are we going to find new business, right? And when I say new business, it's not necessarily new clients, which is certainly an option, but it's going to be predominantly in this environment your existing customers, right? That's where the opportunities are, because, like you and myself, in this environment of uncertainty, where unprecedented uncertainty that we're operating in, we're trying to reduce risk, right? We're really not trying to take any additional chances out there, and put yourself in your potential client's shoes or some new prospective client, unless they have a burning issue and they don't have someone else or some other tool to help them, it'd be pretty risky for them to switch. And they're going to take a lot longer to making any of those decisions, if they make them at all. So the takeaway here is to go after your existing customers to get, and referral partners, and I'll get into that, to increase and maintain your current sales. Does that make sense? Who has we got there? I don't see. Linda.
Yes.
Is that what's been your experience in this new environment that we're dealing with, as far as getting additional opportunities or additional revenue opportunities, or maintaining customers, losing accounts? What's been your experience and struggle?
Well, candidly, I've been newly going, just focused through the consultancy, because before I was more than C-suite stuff. So, but what I've done is going to quite a few meetings, both virtually and before that in person. And I met people through that channel, and I have been getting new clients who they knew me only through the organization, but some of them didn't really know me. They just, someone else said, oh, give Linda a call. So I
Right.
have found that I am really not necessarily growing existing customers, although if I go back to, if I were mentoring a sales team, I do just what you're saying. I tell them to really work with existing customers, and I'd make my circle as big as you did proportionally. But for me right now, it is really being going after opportunities and building some rapport, like you suggested again, and then having them say, well, let's talk some more, and then beginning an engagement. So I think it depends where you are. You know, if you're with a serious group of existing customers, as you might have, it's great to keep growing them. If you don't have that option, then you have to go find a new clients, right?
No, I agree. And by the way, Linda, I was on one of your webinars. I don't know if it was last month or the month before, but it was very good. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
And a shout out for Linda. She's very good.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. So, if we're looking at our kind of our go-to market plan, right? It has changed, right? The way our customers buy, when they buy, how they buy, if they buy, all of those things have changed. And if we, as business people, don't take that into consideration and continue to do what we've been doing before, there's a good chance we're not going to be as successful as we were before. And the cold reality is that the total addressable market for whatever you're doing, for example, Joe and ERP implementation and support, that market has shrunk, right? Simply because there's fewer companies now, right, that have budgets, or if they did have budgets, they've reduced them. It's no longer a priority, right? So the total addressable market for a consultant like Joe has decreased. So what does that mean? That means whatever activities we did to get a new client in the past, well, we're going to have to increase the volume of that activity to get the same new customer, right? It shrunk, so there's fewer out there. There's the same amount of us, at least for now. So it's going to take more effort, right? But I'll give you a quick example. Identify the segments that are growing and where the competitors are struggling. One of our clients is actually a franchise company, and they focus on 3 areas. They focus on hotels. Oops. Not a good one these days. They focus on gyms, public, gyms, really not a good one these days. And finally, they focus on large apartment complexes. So the bottom line is that they saw their sales just really drop significantly, almost immediately. So we had to take a look at the market and say, all right, well, those are the realities of what we're doing. Where's the possible growth? Where can we direct our time and attention? Now, keep in mind, in this case, these franchisees, they were not salespeople. They didn't have salespeople. They were regular folks like you and I who kind of bought into this service and am now trying to grow their business there. So we looked actually at the home market, and because they focus on fixing and maintaining, gym equipment, because all the gyms are closed, folks who are now at home that like to work out don't have a place to go, so they're pulling their old equipment out of the closet and want to get it fixed up, or they're going and buying some higher end stuff so they can work out at home. And we saw kind of the number of phone call and queries rising. Now, this is a little more of a B2C kind of situation, but we turned up the volume on the Google AdWords, which is kind of a marketing approach towards that home gym kind of market. And now, don't get me wrong, sales didn't just boomerang right back up, but they did, for one, stop declining, and 2, they've leveled off and they're starting to go back up. So the point there is, look at your market, look at your customer base, and ask yourself, if you're in their shoes, what changes will they need to make to be successful? right? Because they're going to have to change or they're going to suffer the consequences. Yeah. All right.
I have a
So,
question in the
yeah, please.
from Ben. Ben, I don't know if you want to just unmute yourself and ask it, or if you want me to read it out for you.
So Ben Pastro?
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be a tough one. I know now.
Where
What's
did
up,
you,
Ben?
Where did you get your pumpkin sweater?
Oh my God. I don't know. My wife got it for me.
No, that's not my question, Mark. But I wanted to get your perspective because one of the things that I'm seeing with my customer base is that while the opportunities have shrunk due to decreased spending, the economy, unemployment, whether you're B2B or B2C, everybody's feeling it. There's a shift in business models now to more virtual engagements, whether it's selling, buying, servicing, etc. So does that shift to more virtual engagements, the acceptance of it, and maybe even the preference for it now going forward among some parties, does that actually increase the addressable market for some businesses? But like I said, I'm starting to see that in my customer base. They can kind of stretch their wings much further now because people will meet via Zoom as opposed to having to meet in person. And their addressable market is growing, and the geos in which they're operating is growing. Want to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, first of all, I'm sure everyone in this audience can share their own perspective on that, but it's a great point. First and foremost, obviously Zoom is what folks are doing a lot more of. So that's, whether liked or not, that's the way most of us are doing business. I have yet personally gone and went to a client site. I haven't done it yet, right? But I'm fortunate too, because the way I set up my business, it was already to some degree virtual. But you're right in terms of, like, again, I'll pick on Joe because he was good enough to share. But for his business, if he wanted to stay in the Philly area, he'd be limited. But the reality is, if he wanted to open up to the rest of the country, or for that matter, the rest of the world, there's no question that that's now more realistic, much more realistic, right? But in what Joe and his team do, oftentimes it requires being on site, but that's just a question of preference, for Joe. I mean, I personally have clients in Arkansas. I have a really good client down in Memphis, Tennessee. I have a good client down in San Antonio, Texas, right? And I've visited both. Well, the one in Memphis I've had for a bunch of years, but the other two are less than a year old, and I probably visited them in total 3 times, right? So I don't know if that addresses your question, but it raises a great point that everybody should consider, is that your addressable market may in fact have the total size from a national perspective, yes, it's decreased, but one way to manage that is to broaden your geographic scope, right? Is that the point there, Ben? I think. Yeah. So, the other takeaway here is that obviously, and I think it feeds on this whole Zoom and the fact that we just aren't able to do as many face-to-face calls. We're not. So we have to become more effective at emails, at phone calls, those skills. And it is a skill. And I'm not talking about car salesman, salesy skills. I'm just talking about communication skills with another professional, listening skills. Those things become very critical. By the way, interesting factoid, when I speak, the human, the way we're designed, will translate that information, right? And the way it's processed in our brains is that only 45% of the information is processed that are the actual words, right? The other pieces that we're processing are facial expressions, eye contact, gestures, and of course the tone of how the information is delivered. So if you don't like doing Zoom meetings, get over yourself. If you're going to be a professional and want to be successful, you're going to have to do things that aren't necessarily comfortable sometimes. Doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means you don't like to do it. Okay, we'll get over it. Use this medium because it is a very effective medium, and far more effective than emails and more effective than phone calls, right?
I'm Peter.
Hey, Peter.
I vigorously second your insights. One way that we're all trying to differentiate ourselves is qualitatively be different. If I write, I remember early in my career, I was doing a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and I didn't have any time. But I used to stand in my office and read 2 letters I got each month that were so well written, I look forward to getting them. One was from the Port Authority in New York. When the trains didn't work, they sent out a reason why. It was beautifully written. And the other one was so old, it was when Kelly Services was Kelly Girls. And that was a beautifully written one.
Right.
Secondly, I tell my salespeople, if your level of command of a field is equal to or less than the client you're calling, why the hell is he going to talk to you? So it demands intellectually a constant study and growth in our own understanding, where we're able to suggest to the client, well, what do you think about this? Do you think that's a half-baked idea? Or, and I guess the last thing, and I'll be very brief here, I'm old-fashioned in the sense that everything I do, for example, a gift I have is I was the principal public speaker for a very large consulting firm. So, anything you're good at, writing, analysis, whatever, you lead with that. But everything I do is meant to be about selling. There's no marketing I do that isn't aimed at leading to a sale. And so that's enough out of me. Sorry.
No, it's good feedback, Peter. And a couple things. One, if for example, marketing, I'm not an expert in marketing, so I outsource, right? I have a great marketing person. He's really good, and makes the things that I do right and I do create much more professional, right? So that's a weakness, and it's a time, constraint issue too. So I recognize my weaknesses and I try to overcome them by using others.
Right.
And I couldn't agree with you more about being a lifelong learner. I heard it last week, and I don't recall exactly who said it, but it resonated with me. And they said, the moment you stop learning is the moment you stop leading. Right. So, but all of us here are curious people by nature, and that's why we do what we do. All right. So, and this kind of dovetails a bit into Peter's point, is that the updated sales process, or how you go to market, if you will, how you get your messaging out to that audience to, yes, differentiate yourself, to provide some unique benefits, in the fields that you're working on. We're seeing, social media is kind of a necessary evil, if you like. I will tell you that I have not gotten any new business with social media, but I do know that when someone is quasi interested in what I do, you know, there's two things they're going to do. One, they're going to go to my website, right? And two, they're going to go to LinkedIn. So I know that that's a representation of me and my company and the value it has. So those things have to be up to date. I know there's some LinkedIn gurus in here. You know, Linda, that's one of her, if I'm not mistaken, Linda, that's one of your areas of expertise. So talk to her about, you know, improving your profile.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that, you know, video, I just started using, and I'll be interested to see how it works, but it's a company called Vidyard, Vidyard. And it's basically when for example, when I respond to an email, I can actually create a short video, and I just click a button and I speak the response. And by the way, and I'm dating myself, Peter, you know, I started my career in sales with dictaphone. It's of course, right? It was a Pitney Bowes company.
Right.
And there's no more efficient way to communicate than human voice to another human.
Right.
But Vidyard is another tool, you know, it's a differentiator. So
Sounds great.
When I respond, you know, they see me, they hear me. Obviously, the same information is there, and it's different. And it's different.
I like
Yeah, and there's other companies too, but I just started using it. Obviously, Zoom as well. The old school too, believe it or not, you know, personalized direct mail is actually very effective if it's targeted to the right audience.
Right.
Because we've gotten so deep into emails, and we're all getting way too many emails. You know, in the past, we're getting all this junk mail, right? And we're still getting it. But when it's a personalized, very focused, very professionally done, personalized direct mail piece, it can be more effective than certainly emails and phone calls. But it's these are all kind of numbers games issues too. You know. All right. So let's get into a bit of the meat of the matter. I don't want to go over here. I did promise. So, all right. So I did this for a client, and I thought it was very germane to our conversation, right? So a great way to get more business, not only from your existing customers, but get the referrals from your existing accounts, is to go talk to your happy customers. If you haven't done it, you got to do it. And by the way, I'd be happy to send this presentation to whoever would like it. There's some word tracks, and there's also some kind of templates in here you can use yourself that work. But, you know, if you go to that happy customer and you do some research and you find, you know, and this one was trying to get deeper into an existing account, but depending on the size of the account, it could just be for someone in that in their sphere, right? If you're looking for other companies, gosh, I keep picking on Joe here, but you go to your existing customers where they've been happy, right? That you've done a good job. You know you've done a good job. They like you. They respect you. That's a funny thing about when someone asks for referrals, is that if you have a happy customer that you've provided good service to, you earn the right to ask for that, right? And think about it. Think about some service that you've provided. For example, I referred him, my marketing person who's great, you know, he asked me, you know, do you have, you know, can you provide some introductions to some other clients that you have? And my first response was absolutely, right? Because I like him. He does a great job. I'd have no problem introducing, his name is Martin, to other clients. And he just asked me. And then I'll show you how you should set up the, you know, email introductions in a minute. But ask them, get a list of your happy customers, do a little bit of homework, make it easy. I mean, the other thing, when someone asks for a referral, they're busy people, they want to help, but, you know, it's just another thing on their pile, right? So make it easy for them to help you. what I hear a lot of times, oh yeah, I asked for a referral, and they said they were going to call, Peter and contact Peter and tell him about, my services and try to get us, introduced. And 2 weeks later, you send a note, hey Peter, did you have an opportunity to speak to that colleague of yours? And say, oh I forgot, I'm sorry. Make it easy for them, right? Make it easy for them. And so here's a couple things. One, when you go and ask this customer, have a few companies in mind. Again, picking on Joe, I'm sure there's other companies in the similar industry or different industry that they're his clients work with. You don't necessarily want to go to the competitors, but do a little homework. What other types of companies do they work with, and find that out. And maybe even go to LinkedIn and find out who, depending on the size of the company, who the CEO is of that other company that you want to get introduced to. If it's a bigger company, maybe it's a specific job title. I don't know, CIO, director of IT, whatever the case is for what you do. And here's a word track. It's pretty simple. Hi, happy customer. I have an important question. Are you happy with me and the products, services? You wordsmith yourself, and pause, and they'll say, yeah, wow, you've done a very good job for us. We're very pleased. Wow, that's nice. I'm so glad you're satisfied. We really value you and your business, right? I was hoping you could help me, and that's key, right? Anytime you ask somebody for help, it's human nature to respond. It's a very emotional thing. We're wired to help each other, believe it or not. We have done some homework and identified a few peers, in your other companies, whatever the case would be. It would be fantastic if you would introduce me to some of your peers with a simple email to make it easy for you. And they're going to say, okay, fine. To make it easy for you, I can send you an email that you can copy and paste. Of course, you can change it and do anything you like, but would that be okay? Yeah, actually, great. And every time I've done that, they're like, yeah, please send it. And I can count on one hand the number of times they've actually changed, what I wrote, and sent them. The real key here is that, you'll see, send a copy, copy and paste email template to your happy customer. It's very important that you are copied in the introduction email to this, person being referred. Very important. The reason it's really important is because if I'm going to refer Joe to Peter, it's important that Joe is copied when he gets the email, because when Peter sees that email, he's going to have to do something, right? He's not likely going to blow it off just out of professional courtesy to me, who referred them, because we know each other, we've worked together, we trust each other, we're colleagues, right? So at least with Joe copied there, now Peter knows that Joe's copied, he knows he got it from me, he's got to do something. And he's going to at least take Joe's phone call or, respond to that email. That's something that if you don't do anything out of this conversation today, please do that. And again, I'll be happy to send you this. But that's a very effective way to get that first meeting, right? It's just the first meeting. You're not selling anything. Once you get that, it's an introductory meeting, brief, just to say hello, just to get a better understanding of what they do and see if there's, an opportunity for you to help them. Not salesy, but it works.
Paul, it's Peter again. This will be very brief. This may go over the line of pushy at the risk. So if this happy customer has given me the person and their phone number and how they know each other, et cetera, out of 10 people, sometimes it can take weeks to get them to send the letter. So I call the happy referral right away and said, I'm calling you at the suggestion of, your buddy Joe Jones. And I get generally a meeting because I don't, and if the letter comes in, it enhances it. So I very much want to improve what I'm doing, but in some cases, all I need is the agreement, and then I'll do the work for them, not even writing a letter. I'll make the call. And if I do a very good job in the call to the person, they'll generally see me.
No, it's Peter, you're spot on, and I would often do the same thing, but I'm comfortable with doing that, and I think in the audience here, obviously some folks, it's not particularly the case, but many of us aren't salespeople, right?
Right.
Aren't trained, and this I've just found to be a softer, gentler,
It's wonderful. It
yeah,
is wonderful.
way to do it, and but your way works too, obviously.
It does.
Obviously. And the other thing too is if you send this email off to the person who said they're going to refer you to another colleague, if you don't see that it was sent, because you're going to get copied, right, when it's
Right.
sent, that's in 10 days or so. You can just send a quick email to that person who's going to refer you. Say, hey, just mentioning that, hey, I know you're busy. Did you get an opportunity to send that email out? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, I've totally forgotten. They did, right? Just let them off the hook. They're busy. It's not something that they, it's a priority for them. And that after that, usually they'll send it out and you'll get that copy. So, all right, here's the other big piece that is near and dear to Beacon and its essence, right? It's referral partnering. And I don't think I need to explain the value of that, but the premise behind it is, force multiplier, right? It's kind of a military concept, like the Green Berets, part of the Army. Their mission is to go into a foreign situation and embed themselves in with these local fighters and train them how to be more effective, better soldiers, give them, tactics to make them more effective, right? So, 5 Green Berets can help make, a ragtag group of civilians very effective soldiers, fighting forces, which could be hundreds and thousands, right? So it's a force multiplier. So if you're not doing this, please do it more often. And it's like anything, there's a bit of a skill to it, and there's a process to it, and you need to make some goals like anything else. I will tell you, almost 4 years ago, I started my business, right? And that was after a traditional career in sales and sales leadership. And it was the 3rd private equity portfolio company that I was the sales leader for, and we did a transaction, right? So I was blessed with a little bit of success and asked myself, what do you want to do when you grow up, Mark? And the takeaway on my end was, well, based on what I've seen throughout my career, there's some basic fundamental things that B2B sales organizations just don't do consistently. Anytime I was put into a new VP sales role, it wasn't because things were going great. It was usually because things were going not great. So I was the fix-it guy person. And so with my business, it's basically doing the same thing, going into a new client situation, assessing what their sales strategy is currently, what their sales methodology is, what their sales organization is structured and is manned with, or staffed with, and finally, sales metrics. So in order to get that off the ground, it was a kind of outsourced sales VP model, which it's not terribly common, but in the small, the mid-sized B2B environment, those companies often don't have the resources, or they don't have someone who has a lot of experience developing a strategy and an entire sales organization that's designed around repeatable, predictable sales growth, right? But that's what I did for many, many years. So the fact is, as I mentioned early on, I'm not going to cold call CEOs. I guess I could, but it's not going to be very effective. So my go-to market plan was purely and continues to be referral partner networking. And I made a commitment that I would have no less than 10 referral partner meetings a week. And you say, wow, that's a lot. Yeah, it is a lot. And at the time, I didn't have clients when I first started out, so I had the time, but it was a numbers game. And this is a very effective approach. So, in my world, my target market is CEOs, owners of, 3 million total revenue up to about 100 million total revenue companies. And that's who I wanted to talk to, the CEOs of these small to mid-sized businesses. And so as far as the circle of influence around those CEOs, obviously there's outsourced CFO services, so they could be potentially good referral sources. Business coaches, or for example, I know there's quite a few, but I just have his card here, Alan Prussian, who's a business coach, a very good one, and a Beacon member. Bankers, private equity companies, marketing folks, IT, technology folks like Joe, lawyers, marketing companies. All of these companies deal with small to mid-sized businesses, and that was my target market. And those were the folks that I wanted to talk to about what I do, in hopes that eventually they would have a client or a prospect they could introduce me to that I could help out. So how did I go about that process? I think I will just kind of shorten it up here, but the most effective approach, one, I will tell you, is being a member of an organization like Beacon and getting involved and getting to know some folks. So you're obviously there. The other great resource is LinkedIn, and it's a huge, tremendous resource. You should use it, right? And so I would go and look for, go back, and go and look for kind of geofence where I was going, because you can do that with LinkedIn. And I had the premium service. It's worth it if you use it properly. It truly is. And find these consultants and services in the areas, geographic areas in the Philadelphia metro market, and send them a LinkedIn notice, right? I noticed your background, and I'm interested in learning more about you and your company as a potential resource for my clients. Right? That had nothing to do with me. Don't forget that. It's about them. That's very important, right? And that just in itself, I get so many of these LinkedIn invites, and hey, do you need this service and that service? It's like, whoa, it's way too early to even talk about that, right? It's basically spam to me. It's a waste of their time. So I want to focus on that potential referral partner. How can I help them? So that's why this little tag is, learn more about you and your company, and here's as a potential resource for my clients. And I'm not lying, because I'll show you in a little bit later all the introductions that I've made for other folks, right? Being successful at referral partner networking is not about you, it's about helping your referral partner. So once they get that, You know, if they accept the invite, I just respond, you know, hi, Peter, you know, thank you for accepting my LinkedIn invitation. I repeat it, you know, I'd like to learn more about you and your company as a possible resource for my clients. Are you available for a brief chat the week of June 22nd, right? So if Peter checks out my profile and sees that it might be a match, you know, it's a professional looking profile. Most often the response is, yeah, sure, you know, and I set up a Zoom meeting. So that's how it starts. So that, and I will say it's that simple. But the reason it's effective is because you're not focusing on you, you're focusing on them. I know Charlie's on this call, and he's a huge proponent of that. So, you know, when you have that conversation with this referral partner, the Zoom meeting, again, it's going to be brief. You want to focus 80% of your time on them, right? Tell me about your business, truly. You know, where do you find your clients? You know, who are your best referral partners? Yeah, sure. Tell me about your business. What separates, you know, your business from the competition? You want to learn about them and their business, right? To be a resource for them. And they'll talk. You know, people love to talk about themselves, and they will if they're the right person. And 8 times out of 10 they'll do that. They'll say, you know, I've been talking the whole time. Tell me a little bit more about you. And that's when you can tell them a little bit about you. And if it seems like a good match, you can say, hey, you know what? I really enjoyed the meeting. Obviously, you and I have some complementary value for our different client base. Let's you know, get together every whatever month or every 6 weeks and just touch base, right? Then it's just consistently nurturing that relationship. I don't know why I didn't have it in here, but you know, I butchered John F. Kennedy's quote. You know, ask not what you can do, what your referral partner can do for you. Ask what you can do for your referral partner. That's the mentality. We're almost done here. I just wanted to share that if you are going to go, you know, full on prospecting, there's approaches and a sales prospecting cadence. You know, I'd be happy to talk to you about it, what's involved with it. You know, there's a lot of automation with the CRM where you have emails pre-written that can be personalized, and it's set off, you know, at certain times, and you know, to be effective at. And this is true proactive sales, you know, prospecting. It's not referral. It's the real deal. You know, it's if you're looking for new, just greenfield opportunities. It's an extremely effective approach. It's programmatic. It's measurable, and it works, right? And there's the number of temps, the types of media. And again, I don't want to go into too much detail. I'll be happy to if someone wants to get with me individually. But this just talks about what different parts are here. I will tell you that with if you are going to, you know, make a phone call to a prospect, and this is all, by the way, studies that have been done, so it's based on facts, objective facts. So the best days to call are Wednesdays and Thursdays. The ideal time to call is between 4 and 6, right? If it's a lead. Yep, it usually takes about 6 calls, by the way. And by the way, if they do respond to an email or they, you know, leave you a voicemail, you want to respond to that immediately, right? As soon as possible, because leads are like fresh vegetables. Every moment, you know, they're there, they get less and less tasty, right? They have a shelf life. Other quick one here, emails. You know, the subject line is really critical because all of us get piles of emails all day long, and as one of the first slides said, you got 2.7 seconds to make an impression. 2.7 seconds, right? So it better be good because you're in a pile of all these other emails. And it shouldn't be fantastical, like, to solve world problems and I got this, cure for cancer, but they need to be impactful and short. Don't be salesy. And there's some other kind of best practices. And I think the other key thing, and these are prospecting emails, it's a call to action. Like what's the next step? What's the action we're going to take? Help them to move on. I'm definitely not going to give you this, but this is a live sales prospecting cadence. This one, I think, yeah, it's for a client that we did actually in new sales team onboarding process, and they had 5 new sales reps. They didn't have a sales process for the whole company, but so we created a sales playbook, but we also created this sales prospecting cadence. And these new 5 folks did it, and it was a 90-day sales success program. And by the 90th day, the group of 4, they actually lost one through attrition, which happens, had generated 4.1 million in net new revenue from those 4 new folks. And this is a company that was a smaller company. It was a $12 million company, so it's effective. But the kind of next steps, take action. That's on you, right? You need to take action. My wife pinned this to the back of the pantry door once. I just thought it was great, so I stole it. But to show you that I'm not just talk, not action. I know it's hard to see, but this is a slice of my email. I use Gmail, and it's the folder I have. It's referrals to contacts. So I keep a separate folder of people that I refer, like that I introduce. And it's not always clients, it could be other colleagues, but my goal is to make sure that my referrals, the people that I introduce to other colleagues, is greater than the referrals that other people make on my behalf, right? So I keep a scorecard, right? It's a very important part of being successful in referral partner networking. I don't know, maybe I should confidentiality, but I mentioned Alan. He and I met. Charlie introduced us. Great guy, very competent sales coach, and we had a couple conversations as referral partners. And I introduced him to a president of a client and also a CEO of another client. And the president client I was talking to yesterday, and he said, "Oh, by the way, Alan and I, spoke 2 times, and I think we're gonna, do this." So that's great. I got to call up Alan to see how it went. But the point is, you got to help your other colleagues to be successful, because it will pay dividends. All right, so yeah, I'm a little over, so I apologize. Does anyone have any specific questions? Anything to cover? Any comments?
Brilliantly explained. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that. Well, very good. I know Zoe is recording this, so it's available. My pitch is my contact information, right? The problems we solve for small, mid-sized companies, the things you might hear from owners and CEOs. When you hear these things, think of my company. Our sales have been, have been at the same level for the last few years. In fact, more recently, probably down, right? We've been declining. We're growing, and we need a scalable sales process, right? A lot of clients, they get to a certain point, they just can't get past that next level, to get to that next level. The other thing we see pretty often is that, it's a smaller company, and they have, a large percentage of the revenue dependent on one client. Now, if that client goes south, they're in big trouble. They're in big trouble. They have a sales team, all right? A lot of times, too, the CEO is leading the sales team, right? And they don't have time for it anymore, right? They're growing the business, and they're not effectively managing that sales organization. Yeah. They're not sure what the amount of activity the sales folks are doing. Nowadays, too, they have to retrench how the sales team is going to the market because of COVID. Spent a lot of time with clients re-engineering, redoing the go-to market plan because of that.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.